Philadelphia Phillies have lost another reliever to the free agent market. Yes, Carlos Estevez today agreed to a contract with the Kansas City Royals. The Phillies are now down two of their top three relievers from last season who have now left in free agency in Carlos Estevez and Jeff Hoffman. We're going to get into everything today on the newest episode of Phillies Digest. But first things first, I do want to get into the breaking news from Jeff Passan and multiple reports throughout Major League Baseball. Carlos Estevez and the Kansas City Royals are in agreement on a free agent contract. As far as the deal itself, this is from Mark Feinsand. Estevez's deal with the Royals is expected to be for 2 years and $20 million with a $13 million club option and a $2 million buyout. So basically, he is making $10 million a year for the next 2 years with the club option and the buyout into those contracts. So a guy that I think some people were maybe hoping the Phillies would bring back after they lost Jeff Hoffman to free agency is now heading to Kansas City. And Kansas City is a team who last year showed a lot of promise, a young team, obviously led by Bobby Witt Jr., but a team that can definitely make some noise in the next few years. But one of their biggest issues last year was bullpen. They had a great starting rotation, but they did struggle in the bullpen, having a team ERA over 4 as a bullpen last year. So I will say this is a good get for the Royals. I wanted Estevez back, especially once Hoffman was officially gone. At first, I think I would have rather had Hoffman over Estevez back, but I still am in the boat, and I know we've talked about this a lot here on the channel. I still feel that the Phillies need one more reliever. I think bringing Estevez back would have made sense. He's familiar with everybody. He's still a good reliever, and honestly, I don't necessarily think that $10 million a year is a crazy number for a guy who had a pretty darn good season last year. The last 2 seasons have been the best 2 of Carlos Estevez's career. This is with the Angels and the Phillies combined last year, 54 games, 55 innings, just 5 home runs allowed in 55 innings. This is obviously regular season stats, 50 strikeouts, just 38 hits allowed, 6.2 hits per 9. His ERA under 2.5 at a 2.45, and his WHIP at .909. So just about as good of a reliever season, honestly, as you can ask for. That was one of the better sort of seasons by a reliever in baseball last year based on the full season. Obviously, I think when he was acquired by the Phillies, I think some people were a little bit confused. I think the sort of giving up the prospect in George Klassen was a bit of a question mark for some people. But at the time, the Phillies needed one more bullpen arm. I think it was obvious, and we said that going into the playoffs, we always say you can never have enough pitching, and specifically in the bullpen. And while Carlos Estevez, I don't think had the best season ever with the Phillies, I still think he was really solid. I think Estevez, more to me, is more of a setup guy. I think his stuff works better as a setup guy rather than a closer. But the Phillies did obviously use him in a lot of closing situations last year. But that Mets series, he kind of got thrown into the fire, and obviously led up the big grand slam to Francisco Lindor, which ultimately ended the Phillies season. So Carlos Estevez is now gone, and the Phillies bullpen isn't any better than it was last year. They obviously added Jordan Romano and Joe Ross to that bullpen, but realistically, you lost 2 basically all-star relievers, and you got back a guy in Jordan Romano who I believe is going to be a very good pitcher for the Phillies. Obviously, there is still the question mark there with the injury, but it seems like he's 100% healthy and ready to go. And I love the Joe Ross addition. It was a cheap move, but I don't think he's some back-end closer guy right now. So, as far as the bullpen depth, it's not as good as it was last year. You obviously start at the top with Matt Strahm. Jose Alvarado, who, if you've seen his sort of Instagram, or I did write about this today for crossingbroad.com, he's lost a lot of weight. He looks like he's in the best shape of his pro baseball career, which is very nice to see from Jose Alvarado. The Phillies are hoping for a big bounce-back season from him. Obviously, the addition of Jordan Romano, Orion Kerkering, the Phillies are hoping is going to take another big step. He's still very young. He has the stuff. He just sort of needs more of the experience. Last year was his first full year in the majors. So I think it's really going to be a good, bright future for Kerkering. And personally, I think he is ready to sort of take on that extremely high leverage role this season. Tanner Banks, Jose Ruiz, Joe Ross, those are kind of your bottom three guys. Out of those three, I probably trust Jose Ruiz the most out of those three bottom guys. I think we saw what Jose Ruiz can do last year, and I think there's some promise there. As far as Tanner Banks, he's sort of the mop-up guy, but I think there is something there. Not saying he's, going to be some big high leverage 7th, 8th, 9th inning guy, but I don't think the Phillies would have brought this guy in if they didn't think that he had the stuff. So I think they like what they see from Banks. And now there's obviously one more sort of question mark in the bullpen. There's one more spot. There's been some sort of international free agent signings the Phillies have made, specifically the reliever from Japan that they signed a few weeks back. But really now for the Phillies, it's just the matter of who takes that last spot. Do they make a trade before spring training, or really before opening day? Do they have someone in the minors they're thinking about? Is it somebody on the team that we wouldn't even think about that it's going to be moved to the bullpen? What is the plan now? Because there's still one more spot. So there is room for this Phillies bullpen to still grow. Obviously, everything that happened with Jeff Hoffman was kind of weird. I think the Hoffman incident, I completely agree with the Phillies on not bringing him back once I heard about the situation. Obviously, the second the season was done, my first priority was to re-sign Jeff Hoffman. I thought that was an obvious move for the Phillies. But then we did end up learning that Hoffman wasn't necessarily 100% healthy. He failed a few physicals and then ended up signing with the Toronto Blue Jays. He failed a physical with the Orioles. He failed a physical with the Braves. But it has been a big market for relievers for the last, I would say, 48 hours. It was a weird offseason for relief pitchers. It was guys, there was a big freeze period. It felt like a few big-name relievers went off the board, and then it almost felt like about a month where nothing happened. Obviously, we know the Dodgers got Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, Estevez to the Royals, Rogers to the Reds. Ryan Stanek re-signed with the Mets today. Ryan Presley traded to the Cubs. There's been a lot of moves made as far as bullpen arms over the last 24 to 48 hours, and none of them have been the Phillies. And I don't want to sit here and sort of hit the panic button, because I'm not hitting the panic button on the season. The season hasn't started. I'm not hitting the panic button, but I'm hitting the button for the Phillies to get one more reliever. I need one more. I simply need one more arm in this bullpen. I don't think right now this bullpen is good enough to go win a World Series. I think you have a lot of guys that are good enough to pitch in the World Series, but I don't think the bullpen as a whole is ready to go pitch all the way to a World Series. I still think they need one more, doesn't have to be the best arm in baseball, but I need another solid guy in the bullpen. Whether that's somebody promotion from the minors, or whether it's a trade once again, or a free agent, I just need one more arm. I don't want to be in the situation like we were last year with the fifth starter, just like switching it out every week. I would love just one more consistent guy. Once again, I don't need some huge free agent that's going to cost $15 million a year. Obviously, one more time, I do think that deal for Carlos Estevez was a pretty solid deal. It doesn't seem like the Phillies, once again, their kind of thing these last 5-6 years, they haven't loved giving relievers multi-year deals. So that has kind of been their thing the last few years, and it seems like Estevez, I guess, wanted, a multi-year deal, and maybe the Phillies weren't able to match the price, but I have a feeling the Phillies were more hesitant on matching the years rather than the price. What do you guys think? Will you guys miss Carlos Estevez? I think this is a really good signing for the Royals, and it's a shame that the Phillies let both Jeff Hoffman and Carlos Estevez get away, because right now I still think they need one more. This has been another episode of Phillies Digest. My name is Luke Arcaini, and I will see you guys next time.